Oh Aguleri is an ancient village on the banks of the Anambra River, a few miles from where it flows into the greater Niger River. Late 19th century visitors paid glowing tribute to the beauty of the area. The riverbanks were clad in the brightest green, giant cotton trees, slender palms, and lovely ferns in great variety. Gorgeous kingfishers flashing here and there in the evening golden sunshine. Aguleri was blessed with abundant, fertile, and watered land. The villagers spent much of their time cultivating palm kernel, yam, and cassava farms, while also hunting abundant game in the dense tracts of buffalo grass. They fished, canoed, and swam for relaxation.
A good picture has to include consideration on the African traditional religion, because that was the religious context in which the people lived, from which they came, and it wasn't a religious void. It was a whole view on life. The people of this African traditional religion believed in God, one God, creator, from whom life comes. They also believed in spirits, good spirits and bad spirits. The good spirits to be offered offerings, begging for favors. The bad spirit were also offered a type of joyless sacrifices, begging them, please leave us alone.
The Igbos are a very religious people. They've always believed that there is a supreme being who is responsible for all our actions. This big God is responsible for the seasons, the fruits they get from the farm, and therefore there is need to express appreciation by offering him the best from their farms. In other words, they have always believed in a supreme being. So when the Reverend Fathers came to tell them that this is not the best way to that supreme being, no. So it was very easy for the Catholic faith to grow and flourish within that environment. So it was not a surprise that Tansi, the small Tansi that is, decided he was going to be a priest. Yeah.
Normally, this God Supreme had no shrine. It was much like St. Paul, the unknown God, except that in this case they knew him. There were names in his honor. God gave, God gives. My father's name, which his father gave him, was Arinze Chukwu, which means Deo Gracias. If it had not been because of God, this or that would not have happened. I don't know what happened at the time my father was born, but his father must have had a good reason. It is from this context that the people came. So when Christianity came, particularly as preached by the Catholic missionaries, it was like dawn to people who were looking for the light at 4 o'clock in the morning. What they were looking for, without knowing exactly how to do it, Christianity came and told them, there is sacrifice, but it will not now be a goat or a sheep or even a young man. It is the Son of God who came down from heaven and showed us how to offer himself in sacramental form, in the form of bread and wine, which become his body and blood.
Then the people also see a kind of difference between the Catholic evangelization and the Anglican evangelization, because the other was more colonial and tempted to be autocratic, dictating, following law. The police have to be there. And there's nothing our people feared that time as the police. There was nothing they feared that time as the police. Unlike the Catholic evangelization, it was much more of going to the people, convincing them, and the people, seeing the truth in what they are saying, followed them. So I think these are the main things why an Igbo man, but primarily is he wants God, even in the natural religion he was following. And when the revealed religion came, there was no alternative than to follow it, because it's a light. And it's the light they have been looking for. And they saw that light and followed it.
Aguleri, perhaps more than any other place, was the cradle of Igbo civilization. Early Christian missionaries were impressed by the fervor and sincerity with which traditional religion was practiced. On the 6th of December, 1885, a small party of Holy Ghost fathers and brothers reached the Niger port of Onitsha, the gateway of Igbo land. They were discouraged by the watery world they found there. The matter of their coming to Aguleri was later decided for them by the king of Aguleri, Onyekomeli Idigo. It was King Idigo who first invited the Catholic missionaries to establish a Christian presence in the villages comprising the Aguleri region. In 1890, the first missionary reached Aguleri, and in 1891, a permanent station was established in Idigo's village, Iziagulu, the first link in what was to become a whole chain of Catholic missions in the Anambra Valley.
Exactly at this point that we are now canoeing through, that according to historians, the first French and Irish Holy Ghost missionary fathers of the Roman Catholic Church, as far back as 1817, brought the good news of Jesus Christ, the mercy of God, the beautiful truths of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, right here to Aguleri. They first arrived in Onitsha, which is to our left, and established a beachhead, as it were, in Onitsha. But from there, and especially Bishop Joseph Shanahan, venerable, someday hopefully he will be blessed, came with canoes here with his brother, priests, and as I am now in a canoe, and beached here at Aguleri, of course there was hardly any commercial activity then, and met what would eventually become the first convert to Catholicism, namely the future Joseph Idigo, the Eze, or the king of the Aguleri peoples.
What made this man called Joseph Onyekomelo to be the first king in eastern Nigeria to be baptized? What made him? Is it his own effort or his own? I don't think so. It is the design of God. God saw him as a fitting person to be used. But the most important thing is that he is the architect of what we are seeing today, the conversion we're seeing in this area today. And by inference, our son becoming the first saint, I think, in West Africa. The early missionaries played a lot of role. unlike what we see some people trying to do, to use force to convert people. The early missionaries were very loving.
So Christianity, with its teaching on charity, on generosity, on solidarity, found among the Igbos very fertile ground on which to plant the seed of the gospel, and then it found fertile soil on which to grow.
The missionaries brought them development, education. They were interested in their children. They were interested in their families. And they were interested in them, in their compassion. So these things made the Igbo man to rethink following the traditional religion and accepting the truth in evangelization, the Catholic evangelization. But most importantly, I think, is the grace of God. The grace of God shown through these missionaries and the lifestyle of the mission. I emphasize again the lifestyle. There was something different from the colonial masters, and they followed it.
This is the typical Igbo tendency. You come, they watch you with skepticism, and once they are convinced, they follow you.
There were other reasons why people would be converted at that time. Let us say the grown-up, the Idigo of Aguleri, king of the place, he must have seen in these white missionaries something to elevate his people. Not just association for prestige with a white man, but also the school. And those were the first beginnings of medical care for the people. So he must have seen all that. For a boy like Iwene Tansi, he was sent to school by his uncle, who was headmaster. Gradually through the school, he learned about Christianity. So the transition from one to the other was not something hurtful, not something rough. It was something under grace, smooth.
Later that year, Onyekomili Idigo was baptized into the Catholic Church, receiving the Christian name of Joseph. The missionaries described him as influential and devoted, and above all, eager to make Jesus known and loved.
As a boy, Michael Tansi was known for being diligent, hardworking, a good schoolboy, a good houseboy, the type we call boy. He was good, he worked hard, he was honest, he was obedient, he was chaste as a boy, and he was joyful. He was good at football. He did not go to Atlanta for World Cup, but he played as much as you could play at Aguleri. He prayed. There was once other boys were looking for him. They did not find him. Then they saw him finally in the church, in front of Blessed Sacrament, attentive, fixed, without moving, without looking backwards and forwards. He was praying. He was attentive to Jesus in the tabernacle. He was in union with God, even at that age. As a teacher, Father Tansi was known, that time Michael Tansi, school teacher, then headmaster. He was known to be dedicated. He looked for excellence. from the children in the school. He was teaching them by word and example. He lived a simple life. He was not rich. We are told that as headmaster, he came to school without shoes. But when inspector was coming, he ran quickly and got shoes. As a teacher, he trained the children in sports. Only the best was good for Michael Tansi. Rightly did Professor Elizabeth Isichei, writing his life, entitle it Entirely for God. Obviously, priests for me were distant figures, but I came nearer to him when my baptism was near. We had to go through the catechist, the station catechist at Ezewele, then the central parish catechist at Dunukofia, where he lived. Indeed, he was still building. He was living at Omonachi. That's when I first met him. And I saw him as a figure distant from me, small boy of 9, as a man of God, as one who celebrated the sacred mysteries. You could see that he believed in what he was celebrating. He was almost carried away to another world during Mass or Eucharistic benediction.
I was a young girl of about 11 or 12 in my village when I used to see Father Tansi saying Mass at the altar. I used to admire him, the way he was saying Mass, partly because he's a black priest. And in my little way, I wanted to be like him when I grew up. He was kind and received me well in a fatherly way, and asked me whether I wrote application for sisterhood. I told him I did. And he asked me whether I really meant it. He asked me about my family background. I explained all to him, and he gave me his blessing.
He died when I was 8 years old. But he was our first parish priest, African parish priest in my hometown, Obunike. Obunike was then under Dunukofia parish. And when Dunukofia parish was created, my town did not join the parish immediately. My town was still attached to Aguleri. But when they saw the charisma of the person of Tansi, the way he was going about doing his work, they decided to join the parish. So they joined the parish a year after Obunike. So he was then my parish priest for a number of years before he left and returned to Aguleri.
When he was doing his probation at Umulumbe people up till today in Enugu will not forget him. That is why the Cistercian monastery in Enugu was built there. They said he will trek 25 miles to go and see a widow. Then he was in his probation. Wasn't a priest then. So all these things he did many of them as a layman. And all of us can do it. That is why he's our model. He knows that some people come to market, they don't sell anything. So what he does, the little money given to him, he will buy from several people so that many, many people will get.
We are influenced by other people. So divine providence uses other people to influence us. And there's nothing like a model in front of you. We were not given lectures about going to seminary, but Blessed Father Tansi was himself. His life was more powerful than a university lecture on the seminary. So just by seeing this man, see him say Mass, hear him preach, go to confession to him, see him ride a bicycle, visit the sick from town to town. It was actual grace, definitely. So divine providence used it. Are we surprised that there are many priestly and religious vocations in the areas where he worked because of that type of man? As I would put it, unless you have fire, you cannot inspire. But if you have fire, then you can inspire. Anybody sitting near fire, there is no question of indifference. You will catch the heat.
Many things strike me about the blessed Cyprian Michael Iwene Tansi. His prayer life, his total dedication to God, his devotion to duty, his selflessness, his outpouring of himself in charitable works, his desire to see a formidable local faith-filled community built up. For example, his focus on building up good Catholic families, setting apart a place for the training of would-be mothers. His emphasis on the youth. His was among the first boarding schools we ever had in this part of the country.
That was in 1945. Not just myself, because he had a boarding house for the boys who were doing the last 2 years of the elementary school, Standard 5 and Standard 6. They had to live in the boarding house from Sunday evening till Friday afternoon. They went home, went to farm with their parents on Saturday. Sunday evening they came back and they lived there. They cooked for themselves as best they could. He read to them spiritual reading every day after lunch from Dominic Savio, we remember that. Then he would ring the bell to get up, something like 5:15 in the morning. He would come where we were sleeping and say, "May Jesus Christ be praised," in Igbo. When we, school children in Umudioka, were needing mud for making blocks, we didn't have enough money for cement to have cement blocks. So we had blocks made of mud. And this mud was, you bring a lot of water and bring clay, you pour the water, and you dance on the clay with the water so that the mud gets softer. And when it is strong and soft enough, it is put in molds. And that's how we made blocks. And with those blocks, the school was built.